At the beginning of the movie, we see that a family has come on a boat trip in the middle of the Ceredian Sea, a family of 4, Julia, Tom, and their 2 children, Cassie and Ben. Julia jumps into the water to swim and relaxes in the sea. But suddenly, she feels something strange. She looks around carefully but sees nothing. A few moments later, the same strange feeling returns. Frightened, she starts swimming back toward the boat. Then she feels as if something from beneath is pulling her down. She can't move forward. Panicking, she starts screaming for help. Cassie, wearing headphones and listening to music, cannot hear her mother's screams. Tom was teaching Ben how to fish. Julia struggles to stay afloat and keeps shouting for help, but water entering her throat makes her voice weak. After a few moments, Tom notices that Julia has been missing for a while. He searches the entire boat, then spots his wife drowning in the sea. He shouts for his children and steers the boat toward Julia. Without wasting a second, Tom jumps into the water and swims toward her. He manages to bring her back to the side of the boat, and Ben and Cassie help pull her on board. Together, they try to help Julia regain consciousness. Julia reassures herself that it all happened because of the sea waves. That night is Ben's birthday. The family celebrates together. Ben's father gives him a laptop, and his sister Cassie gives him a scary-looking mask. Just then, Cassie's boyfriend makes a video call. During the call, he shows that the city's sky is covered in thick, dark clouds. Then, suddenly, the call cuts off. Cassie tells her family about it, and her father says it's probably just a network issue. Suddenly, everyone hears a deep, rumbling sound. They see a huge whale swimming around near their boat. Tom explains that whales often follow the Earth's magnetic field, and when they sense an upcoming storm or anomaly, they behave unusually. Suddenly, the boat shakes violently. Ben screams and falls down. Tom suspects that something is wrong with the boat and jumps into the water to check the engine. After a while, he returns, but they notice a deep wound on his shoulder. He tells everyone that he felt as if something massive was behind him, and when he turned to look, the boat's propeller hit him. That's how he got injured. He also mentions that whatever was there seemed enormous. Realizing the boat is badly damaged, Tom tells them they need help. Julia keeps trying to call for help using the radio, but Cassie's phone has no signal. Even in that tense situation, Ben puts on the mask and scares Cassie, which makes her furious. A few moments later, the boat completely shuts down. They are now stranded in the middle of the ocean. Suddenly, Julia hears a faint voice on the radio, but it's unclear. They can't make out what it says. Tom tells everyone they have food left for only 4 more days, and now they must wait for a fishing vessel to pass by. Then something strange appears on the boat's radar, and they hear a weird noise outside. When they go out to check, they see several meteors crashing into the ocean. Each impact creates a massive explosion. Some of those meteors fall very close to their boat. Tom quickly tries to start the engine, and it comes to life. Just then, one meteor lands dangerously close to the boat. Tom soon realizes that these aren't meteors, they're pieces of satellites breaking apart and falling into the ocean. Noticing smoke coming out of the engine, Tom checks it and finds that it's completely burned out. The wind outside grows stronger, so Tom takes everyone inside. The boat starts shaking violently. None of them notice that the boat's compass is spinning uncontrollably. The boat continues to shake intensely. Ben falls again and cries out in pain as huge waves crash against the vessel. Tom struggles to bring life jackets for everyone. Suddenly, the boat's power goes out completely. Tom manages to fix it, and the lights turn back on. Ben then notices blood dripping from his mother's nose. Cassie feels dizzy and throws up. Tom tries to contact someone using the radio, but there's still no signal. Then, a sharp, high-pitched sound comes from outside. The wind grows even stronger. Julia tries to close the boat's door, but the wind is so strong that all the windows and doors start breaking. Tom lights a flare outside, and moments later, everything around them is swallowed by complete darkness. The next morning, everyone woke up, terrified and confused. They thought they had somehow survived that terrifying storm. But as they looked around, they realized that half of their boat was completely destroyed. When they looked outside, they saw something unbelievable. The entire ocean had disappeared overnight. What used to be deep water was now dry land, and their boat was stuck in the sand. Everyone was in shock. Cassie checked her phone for a signal, but there was no network at all. Meanwhile, Ben was playing with 2 dead crabs he had found. When Tom checked the compass, he noticed it was completely reversed. The last time something like this happened, he said, was almost 700,000 years ago. Cassie started crying as she looked at a picture of her boyfriend. Julia tried to comfort her, but Cassie got upset and walked away. Julia and Tom then began checking what supplies they still had. Ben released his birthday balloons into the sky, hoping someone nearby might see them and realize people were still alive there. Tom tried using the radio again to call for help, and this time, he managed to contact someone. A man named Now, who introduced himself as a submarine captain. Now told Tom that his submarine had also gotten stuck on dry land. He explained, the Earth's magnetic poles have flipped. That's why the ocean has pulled back and all the lower areas have dried up. Now also said that he hadn't seen any other survivors yet, all communication systems were down. He warned Tom, the poles will shift back soon. Within a week, the ocean will return, and when it does, it's going to be catastrophic. He advised them to move to the highest ground they could find. Now also mentioned that his partner had died in the crash and that there was space for only 3 people in the submarine. Tom begged him to help save his children. Now shared his location, and Tom calculated that it would take at least 2 weeks to reach the submarine. So he told everyone, get some rest tonight. We'll leave tomorrow morning. The next morning, everyone was packing up their supplies when Tom heard a dog barking. He turned and saw a limping man with a dog, holding a long spear in his hand. Tom approached him and tried to talk, but the man didn't respond. Tom offered him some water. As soon as the man finished drinking, he suddenly attacked Tom with the bottle and started kicking him violently. Julia saw what was happening and ran toward them, but it was too late. The man had already stabbed Tom with the spear, killing him instantly. Then the stranger ran after Julia, trying to kill her. Julia sprinted toward the boat to save herself. The man threw the spear, hitting Julia in the shoulder. In pain, Julia managed to climb onto the boat. She hid her children in a small storage area and handed Casey a flare gun. Then she took a knife and hid in the bathroom. The man began pounding on the boat's door furiously. Eventually, he broke the door open and entered. First, he grabbed some food and ate it, then started searching the entire boat. When he entered the bathroom, Julia cleverly slipped out through a small vent. As soon as she got outside, the man's dog attacked her. Julia stabbed the dog to death with her knife. Hearing the dog's cries, the man rushed outside. When he saw his dead dog, he became even more enraged. Meanwhile, Julia tried to sneak back into the boat through a broken window. But before she could, the man got inside and kicked her hard. Julia tried to hold on to the furniture to protect herself, but the man grabbed her arms so she couldn't lift the knife. Then he pulled her by the hair, slammed her to the floor, and started choking her. The children were hiding and watching everything in fear. Suddenly, Casey gathered her courage, came out, and fired the flare gun at the man. The flare hit him directly, setting his body on fire, and the flames quickly spread throughout the boat. The kids immediately ran outside. Julia rushed back into the burning boat to grab the map and their essential supplies. Outside, Ben and Casey were crying beside their father's body. Julia joined them, and together they said their final goodbye in tears. Then Julia noticed something horrifying. The burned man had managed to crawl out of the burning boat, still alive. Without wasting a second, she grabbed the children, and they all ran for their lives. Moments later, the entire boat exploded in a massive fireball. After walking a bit further, they stopped near a small waterfall to take some rest. Casey told her mother, maybe that madman came here after seeing the balloons. Hearing this, Ben felt guilty. Julia comforted him, saying it wasn't his fault, and told everyone to keep moving because that crazy man was still following them. As they started to leave, Ben noticed something shocking, a hammerhead shark trapped in a small puddle of water. Julia then realized that the madman was getting closer. They ran as fast as they could and eventually climbed up to higher ground. There, they found a large area full of toxic waste and moved carefully through it. They thought they had finally escaped from the man. While walking, they saw many dead sea creatures that had perished due to the lack of water. They also saw piles of plastic waste scattered across the dry ocean floor. Ben was walking slowly, and Julia noticed that he was suffering from dehydration. She told them to sit down and rest for a while. When she opened the water bottle, she was shocked to see it was completely empty. Casey then admitted that she might not have closed the lid properly. Julia got angry and said, because of your carelessness, our lives are now in danger. Casey replied in frustration, so what? We're probably not going to survive anyway. The two began arguing. Despite the tension, they kept moving forward. After some time, they found the wreckage of a crashed airplane. Seeing some movement inside, they got scared, but then realized it was just birds. They decided to spend the night inside the plane. They shared the last bits of chocolate they had. Julia found a family photo inside Tom's jacket pocket, which made her emotional. Casey then asked, Mom, how was your love story with Dad? Julia smiled softly and said, your father was my patient at the hospital. One day he gave me a flower and a poem, and that's how it all began. That night, Casey stepped outside the plane for some air. Suddenly, the madman appeared and tried to grab her from behind. But before he could, Julia attacked him from behind and stabbed him repeatedly with her knife, killing him. The next morning, they found the man's body horribly mutilated. They realized something terrifying. there must be another deadly creature nearby. As they left, several crabs crawled out of the man's mouth. After walking for an hour, Julia and Casey were studying the map while Ben ran toward a small puddle to drink water. Julia stopped him, warning, "Don't drink that dirty water, it'll make you sick." The sun was scorching hot, so they covered their heads with cloth. Ben was too weak to walk any farther, so they decided to stay there for the night. Julia and Casey gathered some of the plastic waste around and used it to build a temporary shelter. They all rested for a while. The next morning, Julia woke up to a strange noise. When she went outside, she was horrified. Hundreds of crabs were crawling toward them. She immediately woke the children, and they all started running. While fleeing, they saw a huge ship nearby with 3 surviving crew members on board. One woman wanted to help them, but the other 2 stopped her. They shut the container door, leaving Julia and her kids outside. The crabs quickly got closer. Julia lifted her children up onto the container, but when she tried to climb up herself, one crab bit her leg. The kids pulled her up just in time. However, several crabs entered the container through a small hole. The 3 crew members tried shooting them, but there were too many. The crabs swarmed over them, killing 2 instantly. When the 3rd tried to escape, they dragged him down and tore him apart. Julia, bleeding from her wound, bandaged herself and fainted. When she regained consciousness, she found herself alone. A dust storm was raging outside. She picked up a gun from a dead crew member and began shouting for her children. After some time, Casey came running, saying, "Ben and I went to look for help, but we couldn't find anyone." Ben had found an empty container where they could take shelter until the storm passed. Julia used her lighter to cauterize her wound to stop the bleeding. The pain was unbearable. After the storm, they moved to another container and found several bottles of water inside. While checking the crew members' belongings, they found a radio and another gun. They used the radio to contact Now again. Now said, "A sea creature attacked me. I'm injured, but based on my calculations, the ocean will return before you reach me. Get here as fast as you can." Julia replied that they had lost their map. So Now fired a flare into the sky to show his location. Julia saw it from a distance and started moving in that direction. After walking for a long time, they finally climbed a hill and spotted the submarine, but to reach it, they had to cross a steep rocky slope. Without wasting time, they began climbing. Suddenly, massive rocks started falling from above. Julia pushed Casey and Ben aside, saving them just in time. The falling rocks created a huge wall between them. Julia shouted, "Go on without me, I'll be fine." But the children refused. They cried, "We're not leaving you behind." Julia insisted, "I'll find you later, go now." Eventually, Casey took her brother and ran ahead. They crossed the mountain and reached the submarine. There, they found Now lying in a pool of blood. He said weakly, "I don't have much time left. Take the submarine and save yourselves." Casey noticed one seat was still empty, so she ran back to get her mother. Meanwhile, Julia saw thousands of crabs crawling toward her. She fired several shots, but there were too many of them. Just then, she saw Casey calling to her and reaching out her hand. Despite her injured leg, Julia climbed up and ran with Casey toward the submarine. The crabs were right behind them. Ben was on top of the submarine, shooting at the crabs to buy them time. Julia and Casey quickly climbed inside. Now was sitting near the hatch, barely alive, when the crabs reached him and tore him apart. The 3 sealed the submarine's gate shut as the crabs surrounded them. They looked outside. A massive tidal wave was approaching fast. They strapped themselves into their seats, held each other's hands tightly, and braced for impact. The enormous wave lifted and shook the submarine violently. As everything spun around, Julia's mind flashed through all the memories of their journey. Casey threw up from the pressure, and then everything went black. After some time, Julia and the children slowly regained consciousness. They realized they were still alive. When they opened the submarine's hatch and stepped outside, they found themselves in the ruins of a destroyed city. They looked around in awe. They had survived. And from that moment, their new life had begun. And with that, the movie ends.